Oh, hey guys, it's Thoughts a Lot with my first anime What If. So, for my first anime What If, I am going to be doing a My Hero Academia What If, and I'm going to combine it with one of my favorite shows from when I was growing up, Avatar. So, for you guys that don't know about Avatar, essentially the premise is around a world where there are four great nations, and each of them has an elemental bending power, meaning they can kind of control that sort of quote unquote element. So the four basic elements in Avatar are, in order, there is earth, water, fire, and air. And each time the Avatar, who's named after the series, is reborn, they get control over all four of those elements. But each time they're reborn or reincarnated, they're also reborn into a cycle of one of those nations. So if they were air last, they'd then go on back to earth, and so on and so forth. So if we go to the last sort of moment where our what if could have started realistically, we're actually going to skip over to Avatar: The Legend of Korra. So in Avatar: The Legend of Korra's third chapter, we can see that the Avatar cycle was temporarily broken. So we're going to make that our plot point that we're going to pivot from that series and say that the light spirit that actually guides the Avatar, that kind of stores all of the previous spirits of the Avatar, wasn't kind of killed at that moment. They weren't, removed at that moment. They were actually transported because of that. So again, we don't really have these kind of concrete rules about the spirits in that series. So we're going to say that it was actually transported and reincarnated into the world of My Hero Academia and into our main character, Izuku or Deku. So with our new knowledge of the fact that this has been going on inside of this alternate universe, we're going to say that Deku's, seems like a quirk, is going to be that when he gets angry or his life is threatened, he can channel these four basic elements around him to protect himself and those around him. So this is actually the Avatar state from the Avatar series, and as seen, the power of the Avatar state is massive. Essentially, it gets to epic proportions, to be quite frank, and when controlled by the avatars, such as Avatar Kyoshi, we see that she literally splits off an island from a continent. We see Avatar Roku, fighting a volcano. Yeah, this sounds pretty insane. To be quite frank, it is pretty insane. And Avatar Aang, inside of The Last Airbender, in the first book, we actually see that he single-handedly fights an entire battalion of ships because the moon spirit was killed. I don't want to spoil that, but if you haven't watched the series, you need to watch it. It is amazing. But continuing on, so the power of the Avatar state is massive, and so people think this is a pretty good quirk, but there is a drawback that it can only happen when he's kind of angry or anything. But the fact that he has a quirk actually does change the story quite a large amount. So, his quirk isn't going to be entirely obvious or seem that strong because, again, it only happens when he's angry, and we don't really get to see it that much inside of the story at the start, let's say, because if from the story we can see that Deku's mother's quite protective, she's quite, I wouldn't say overbearing, but she does take good care and she makes sure that he doesn't get himself into trouble. And since he doesn't get into much trouble and he doesn't get into situations where he would be put in danger, he doesn't really get to show his quote-unquote quirk much. He doesn't get to show his powers. And so the fact that he has a quirk, though, it does put him on better footing with all of his classmates, and especially Bakugo, his main rival in the series, who actually initially dislikes Deku for not having a quirk and ridicules him, mocks him, bullies him because of it. And that kind of shapes his personality because as he's growing up, he's being consistently bullied by Bakugo. He's not very confident because of that either. And now that he's got a quirk and Bakugo isn't going to be bullying him as much, or even if he tries to in this series, he's going to be able to retaliate with some decent force, I'd say that they actually have a nice friendship, almost like a rival kind of friendship, like Naruto and Sasuke after they have their fight in the Valley of the End in the end of the original Naruto series. So Deku grows up a bit more confident, he's not being bullied for being quirkless, and he's actually a relatively happy, normal child. Though sometimes he experiences weird visions, though. This is him, it's quite weird. It's not something that we really see too much inside of My Hero Academia. Maybe we see it with One for All, and actually the Avatar state and the Avatar powers actually kind of resemble One for All a little bit because of the fact that it has previous users, and we kind of get like some inkling that One for All allows you to communicate with the previous users, except we don't really get to see that much. I mean, we get to see it a little bit in the fight with Shinso in the tournament arc, which we will actually have in this, spoilers, but this is a decent distance away. But we get these weird visions that Deku has where his eyes will go blue and he'll kind of go into his own world while he's sleeping. And he'll have these visions, and it'll always be of these kind of amazing heroic feats that these strangely dressed people with these crazy powers are doing. And, they'll always end with these exact 3 words: bring them balance. And honestly, Deku doesn't think much of them initially, because he's quite a small child at this point in the story. He doesn't really get it. But they become more and more vivid as he starts to grow up. And by the time he's 6, he's getting really worried about them. They're becoming quite frequent. And he finally approaches his mother. And, being a child, being quite hyperactive and so on and so forth, his mother initially ignores it. He just brushes them off as maybe a weird dream or nightmare that he keeps having. And he's like, oh, just, if it happens again, come to me. But this all changes when Deku wakes up and seemingly sleepwalks to his mother's room. And he seems possessed. To her horror, his eyes are glowing bright blue. And he's saying the same 3 words he claimed to be haunted by. Bring them balance. Deku's mother watches him slowly walk back into his room. His eyes are just illuminating the hallway, and, he's blowing gusts of wind everywhere. And a glass that's by her bedside table, the water is vibrating and starting to lift out and make weird contorted shapes and come back into the glass. And then everything goes deadly silent. She sits there and she waits, confused and scared. After a few moments, she regains her composure a little bit, still quite shaken from that. Visibly, she's very scared, but she walks into Deku's room to see if whatever that was subsided. And it had. Deku was sound asleep in his bed. No signs of any. She's still very worried though. This isn't going to she's not going to continue to go to sleep after that. That's a shaking experience. And so she stays awake. She sits in a chair in his room, watching over him as he sleeps. And he wakes up and he's fine. She sighs with relief that he's okay. So nothing odd happens for the next decent while. For the next few weeks, it's all fairly normal. No more visions, no more complaints, and no more strange occurrences. But she decides to leave her son in the blue about this, because over those few weeks, if she'd have told Deku, it would have been quite stressful for him, and he's quite a small child. It's not right to actually burden him with this knowledge. But he goes to sleep again, and she's watching over him as is usual for her, and just as she's falling asleep, his eyes start to glow a bit. And she's passing out asleep at this point, and honestly, she just really doesn't notice, because she's that sleepy from being sleep deprived for weeks, just watching over her son. And just as she's falling asleep, his eyes start to go blue. And as she drops, Deku goes into another one of his visions. But this one's different. He sees that he's not actually just watching something this time. This time it's an experience, and he's conscious for it, and he can feel things. And he's standing in a vast, empty space. And a man walks up to him. He sits down, and he perks up a smile. And before he can say anything, this man just starts doing some crazy stuff. He pulls out some balls, juggles them with wind, he's floating about cross-legged, and Deku's just looking a bit scared and a bit confused. And the man notices this, so he regains his composure, puts the balls away, and takes a deep breath, says, "My name is Ang. I'm one of your previous lives." And on that note, I'm actually going to end this episode there. I think that we've had, a good 10 minutes of this kind of story going on, and a lot of it was backstory and explanation, so sorry if it was a bit boring, but in the next part we'll actually get to see a bit more action and a bit more things going on, now that we've kind of set the scene, got some introduction to what's actually going to happen. So thanks for watching, guys. I will see you guys in the next part, which will probably be uploaded pretty quickly after this one. Alright, bye guys. Thank you.